Hello everyone and welcome to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters across the franchised and independent dealer sectors.
Hello and welcome from me, Curtis Hutchinson and Philip Nothard, to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast interview. Today, we're delighted to welcome back friend of the pod, Mike Allen. Now, Mike will be familiar to many listeners from his time as an industry analyst at Zeus Capital, commenting on car retailing trends, especially in the listed franchise dealer group sector. Since September, Mike's been the managing director of Cambria Private Capital, the new startup investment arm of dealer group Cambria Automobiles. And Mike's joining us today to tell us more about this venture and what he's seeing in terms of startups and what this will all mean to dealers. So a warm welcome back to the show, Mike.
Good afternoon, gents. Good to be back on.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's
too
been
long.
A little while.
You've been busy though, Mike, I must admit, and you did have a bit of time off. So
I did.
it's not all our fault.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It does. And welcome back. I mean, as Curtis has said there, I mean, you're familiar to many listeners as an industry analyst, and you've been on the podcast numerous times over the years. But do you want to tell us about your new role, why you became involved in this new venture, and what its business proposition is, so they get a bit more feeling for the listeners what you're involved with now and what it's about?
Yeah, of course. So, managing director at Cambria Private Capital. So my focus is really identifying and nurturing promising post-seed mobility companies. So we don't want to just be a financial investor where we give a founder some money and say, go and make a multiple on that money. We want to be more. We want to be partners in a true sense. We want to be actively involved with the founders on a month-on-month basis. We want to help them conduct research into the sector where they can add value. We want to leverage our automotive expertise. And that's not just the expertise I've got. I'm really fortunate to have a very good investment committee. So our esteemed founder, Mark Lavery, is on that investment committee, as you'd expect. We have our group CFO, Paul Buddin. We've got Rodney Smith, who's got over 6 decades of industry experience. And we've got William Charnley, who's a NED at the Cambria Group, who's a legal expert, and Michael Burt, who's also a NED at Cambria, has been from the beginning, and has got his own private equity firm, Promethean. So I'm really fortunate to be working with people with that experience. And what our vision really is to, create a bridge between the automotive past and the future, and focus on innovation that can help dealers and consumers.
I mean, Mike, that really is an impressive team you've got there. Now, I'm kind of conscious of the fact that you've only been in position and the business has only been operating since September. So can you just take us through how many startup businesses you're currently working with? And what can you tell us about the business solutions that they'll actually be offering to dealers?
Yeah, so I started in September. And then we launched the business or the fund on the 23rd of October. So it's quite new. Having said that, I mean, the mobility tech VC ecosystem is huge. There's 9,500 early stage mobility companies in the world. And, we've been talking to just over 250 companies in the UK. Some of them have got in touch with us. Some of them we've reached out. Some of the opportunities have come from our network. So the opportunity is huge, and we're scratching the surface at the moment. Having said that, it's really has kept me busy talking to. There's so many great businesses out there from lots of different perspectives. So I've been looking at the industry for nearly 25 years, and I've seen it in a particular lens. I think with this role, I'm seeing it in a completely different way, which is fascinating. But some of the companies I've been talking to, they're looking at bringing forward thinking solutions into the industry. Areas like AI, like you'd expect, fintech, EV technology. With VC, you've got to look 5 to 10 years ahead as well. So, there's other models, digital marketplaces, different ways to attack car financing, fleet ownership, peer-to-peer car lending, micro-mobility, ride-hailing. The list is endless. It really is a huge kind of ecosystem. But I think, our focus really is, helping UK dealers and improving the customer experience. I think with some, I've worked with some successful startups, and I think the thing they all have in common is they bring about a better consumer outcome working with the dealer ecosystem. And I think that's a good formula.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, the sheer number of companies that you've already been working with will surprise a lot of listeners that, there is this ecosystem out there. In terms of the startups, is there anything linked to used car retailing, and any sort of future trends you're spotting in some of the startups in terms of used car retailing? Because you were talking there about sort of the better outcomes for consumers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it stems from problem solving as well. And I think one of the big problems we're all seeing in used car retailing at the moment is confidence in EVs, and helping consumers have that confidence, and maybe battery technology and how batteries degrade over time, and certification is a potential solution there. The customer journey in terms of working with dealers in a hybrid way, in a smarter way, niche solutions that improves that journey is another way of doing that. But I think the big problem at the moment is EVs and getting people's confidence in that, and it's a huge problem to solve.
And I mean, you touched on it slightly earlier about the size of the mobility space and complexity, but as I say, there's many moving parts within it from all sorts of areas. And you mentioned a few there in terms of fintech. You talk about AI, talk about the evolution of EV. But I mean, are you, and as you said there, that VC is more about that 5-10 year future. Where is the industry heading? Are you seeing anything that's starting to emerge already? Of significant trends that you may not have thought of before you got involved with this space, because it's not an entirely new area for you, but you're now dealing with these, startup businesses, these entrepreneurs that are thinking 5 and 10 years ahead, and they're not thinking of tomorrow, the end of the month, the end of this year. They're thinking of where the industry is heading. Are you noticing any emerging trends from what they're looking at and what they're getting involved with?
Yeah. So again, there is some complexity to this. So, we're not making bets on what's going to happen in 15 years' time. There's a lot of people in Silicon Valley that will do that now, and they will, particularly around AI. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars was raised in finding the single AI solution. To me, that's betting on a horse race, and that's not what we're going to do. Clearly, AI is going to be a part of the ecosystem and the customer journey, but ultimately, it will be owned by an Apple, a Google, maybe some of the OEMs. So it's working with companies that can utilize these off-the-shelf AI solutions and bring it together within the ecosystem. So we've got to be mindful of 10, 15-year trends, but equally we're not betting on those, because I think your vision becomes blurred. It's really understanding what's out there. So to be very clear, we're not investing in pre-seed companies and some of these concept businesses where they read the future. So for example, autonomous driving, there's you can split that into about 6 different verticals, from cameras, radar, full stack technology, mapping, processing, perception software, and different ways of autonomous driving. We're not likely to be betting on that. That's for the guys in Silicon Valley. What we want to do is, there's a business that's had some traction in the industry. There's some unit economics that we can help. And then with our sweat equity, and that's not just a financial resource, that's our network, our ability to find equity, debt, etc. It's helping to scale those businesses where there's already a little bit of traction. So I wouldn't want you to think we're kind of
yes. You're not necessarily looking for the next best thing. You're actually looking at what's in the market, what's worth the support, the involvement, be it, like you say, whether that's through expertise or networking opportunities or investment, and growing those businesses to help them succeed and get involved with them.
Yeah, and some of the group values as well, which has served Cambria very well in terms of monthly board meetings, financial rigor. Rather than getting kind of a bit blindsided by the future, it's we've got businesses to run, to generate revenue, generate cash, etc. In the here and now. So it's bringing that all together and being the right partner to get these businesses to the next stage.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters, a special weekday episode of Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising.
Now, Mike, I'm guessing that the advantage of being part of a big dealer group is that you can actually trial some of these new services that you're talking about in a live environment. How's that going, or what is the plan that you have to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge advantage, I think, from a standard financial investor, and indeed some investors which would write bigger checks than us are interested in our perception and experience of that. Does it actually work? And from the company's point of view as well, being a commercial partner clearly generates revenue, but it's got to work for the for both sides and win-win. So it's utilizing that kind of, is the chemistry right? Does it work for the company? Does it work for the group? But what's hugely insightful for me is looking at it from, how do you sell it into a dealer? Is it through the operators? Is it through finance? Is it through sales? What's the actual ROI? How do the dealers measure the ROI? How do they see the ROI? The ROI might not always be in terms of pound notes. Quite often it is, but it could be time saved, so people can utilize that time and drive pound notes in another way. So it's I think it's a big advantage, and it's hugely insightful, I think, as an investor, to see that interaction live, really, rather than relying on a third party to do that due diligence for you. I can see that and be part of it.
Yeah, I mean that really does give you an advantage. Are there any of the startups that you're working with? Do you actually have anything live in Cambria at the moment, or is there a plan to introduce something, say, this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to announce to everybody every single investment or partnership that we announce.
Yeah.
It will be quite private, to be honest with you, and we'll do things in our own way,
Yes.
in the right time. But we are working with, we're helping Car Care. That's the inventory management software business. John Mealy, who's ex-Carwow, is scaling that up in the UK. So we're working with those guys, which I think is an exciting business. Measuring your inventory at this time, given where interest rates are, controlling the controllables, I think is a huge service to the dealers at the moment. So that's an exciting venture. I've got no doubt that will work out well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And obviously there's the financial benefits to Cambria of investing in these businesses, but it also gives you an opportunity to introduce some of this new tech at an early stage, doesn't it? Because you can effectively cherry pick whatever you're investing in to think, yeah, this is a good fit for the business. We're going to commit to this.
Yeah, and obviously I've got a team of operators around me as well, very seasoned operators. Cambria is a very stable business in terms of the senior people at that business that I've seen multiple cycles. So there's some excellent operators there, where I can always gain their interest, or whether they think it's right.
Yeah.
We've got some excellent IT directors as well. So I'm always looking at it from lots of different perspectives.
And I mean, it's fascinating, and I very much doubt that this will be the last time we have you on, Mike, because to talk about what's happening, particularly in that investment sector and that private equity space, because I think there's a lot you'll be able to share as you progress. I mean, as you said right at the start, it's still early days yet. Joining there in September and really incorporated in October of last year, and exciting times. But back to having you on the podcast and back on, it's been a while, and we couldn't have you on without asking you to take your view on how you're seeing the automotive sector at the minute. I mean, you're still heavily involved generally with the automotive sector, but what are the main headwinds that you see facing, and the opportunities for dealers at the minute in this sort of early stage of the new year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been tough, hasn't it, for all dealers. I think pretty much from April last year, we saw a lot of pressure in the used car market. Consumer confidence is still negative. Hopefully we're at the point where we might get some interest rate cuts. Stock markets, we're betting on that being quite early. I'm sure we'll get them this year. When is a different kind of question. January feels okay, relative, probably to last January, but I think there's still going to be a little bit of turbulence, to be honest, during the first half of the year. Hopefully the second half of the year, as we start to see those interest rate cuts, will help improve. But yeah, I think the sector's had a choppy kind of period, but most of these businesses, I always said they never got the credit they deserve for their resilience. And I think that the sector in general has been really good at kind of dealing with challenges and being resilient and moving on to the next. But hopefully, as we go into the second half of the year, inflation under control, interest rate cuts happening, helping consumer confidence. But we're seeing an oversupply of stock. There's challenges in EV. There's always cost pressures. So there's always challenges to deal with, but hopefully, we can see 2024 as a kind of, storm, finishing, and
Yeah.
calmer waters, hopefully. Let's see if we get that.
This point of change where it's sort of, we get this period of flatness as we get, breathe fresh air and see what happens. But yeah, I think I concur with a lot of that. I think there's still a lot of financial pressure out there at the same time as a lot of complexity to work out, where you be it, with things that you're involved in that fintech space, or, that cost effectiveness and efficiency savings. But it's going to be an interesting year, this, but I think hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything goes as it should do, then H2 should be a more positive part of the year.
Yeah, no, agreed.
And final one, any thoughts on some of the overseas purchases that we saw last year of some of the big name listed groups? Pendragon acquired by Lithia from the US, Lookers being acquired by Alpha Auto from Canada, and of course Marshall before those acquisitions. I'm kind of interested, as someone working for a private group, what do you see as the future for listed dealer groups in the UK?
Well, I did say at the time that these shares were very much undervalued, and when they were trading below net tangible assets, you were always going to attract, overseas attention, I think, because there was always a big multiple gap between US and UK dealerships, and not necessarily the same gap in quality. So it hasn't surprised me to see, the shares were very low for a long time. And when something's well below intrinsic values, somebody's always going to see that opportunity. So it's always going to be a matter of time, to be honest with you. And we'll see what occurs. What occurs this year. I think in terms of working in a private group, I mean, it's nice. Yeah, there's a storm. It's trading conditions aren't easy, but you can still make long-term decisions. And for a business, what we've got in private capital, that's essential, really. In that, we're making decisions for the next 5 years and not being too detracted by what's happening in the very short term.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And it's probably worth just mentioning that we had Mark Lavery on the podcast, probably getting on for 18 months ago. And back then he was saying that, within the next 12, 18 months, there probably won't be any listed dealer groups in the UK. And he pretty much called that right, didn't he?
No, absolutely. It's he's very good at making a lot of long-term predictions, actually.
Yes,
that's why he's in the position he's in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I say, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the podcast. I mean, it's been a while. I think some exciting opportunities, and I can tell by your voice, the excitement in what you're getting involved with and what you're seeing those opportunities is fascinating. So we'll welcome you back on in the future when you can tell us a little bit more. You might be able to talk about some of those successes that you put above the line that you can talk about and things like that. But and your broader view of what's happening in the sector in general is always valuable to us and the listeners. So it's been an absolute pleasure in having you back on, Mike. So thanks for coming back on.
No, absolute pleasure as always, gents, and it's always a great listen. So appreciate the work you do as well.
Well, thanks for that, Mike. Thank you for joining us today for this weekday special interview with Mike Allen. Philip and I are back with the week's big car retailing headlines on Saturday. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. Philip and Curtis will be back with the week's big motor retailing headlines on Saturday. Live, on demand, wherever you are, on your podcast feed.